Okay, let's call the meeting to order for the Westfield Redevelopment Commission at 6:12 PM on January 17th. John, take roll, please.
Joe Plankus,
Here.
Doug Holtz,
Here.
Jill Doyle,
Here.
Bob Beaudry. Here. Linda Noss,
Here.
Mike Steele.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. Has everyone signed their oaths and taken care of that this evening? We're all set on that? Good, thank you. Doug, you'll have to make arrangements with John to get your oath signed for the year.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. Election of officers is the next item on the agenda.
Mr. President, this is Doug Holtz. I'd like to nominate the existing slate of current officers to again be the officers for the coming year.
Hey Doug, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Chris Larson. I believe due to statute, you have to show your face whenever voting or making motions or anything like that.
Yeah, that's correct. We'll need to be able to see you, Doug.
Oh, is that-
There he
There
is.
we go.
Okay,
Thank you, Chris.
do you want me to make the?
Please repeat the motion, Doug, if you would, please.
Okay, Mr. President, I make a motion that the existing slate of officers continue in their current roles for the coming year.
Okay, I have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second, to re-elect the officers in their current positions for 2023. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John, if you'll take the roll, please.
Linda Noss,
No, I'd like to see a change in officers after so many years.
Bob Beaudry,
No.
Jill Doyle,
Yes.
Doug Holtz,
Yes,
Joe Plankus.
Yes, motion carries 3-2.
Just to back up, Doug, could
Surprise.
we see you when you vote yes, please?
yes,
Let's see.
Oh, we don't have a picture, Doug.
there we go.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the Redevelopment Commission December 19th, 2022 meeting minutes. Any changes or corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none.
Yes, I think there are a couple on this copy that I have.
Okay, I did make a couple changes on spelling with,
Yeah,
Marla?
those aren't on this copy. And the Colts
okay.
thing,
Did we get the new one posted, John?
hold on.
So one of the changes was, I think spell check got me.
There's
It's in
one
the-
change near the top of page 2, Linda, and one near the top of page 3.
It was the word breakdown, came out two words, B-R-A-K-E.
Breakdown in the preseason game.
Okay, those are on this copy, but not what I printed out earlier today. Sorry,
Yeah, okay.
that's what I had reviewed.
Any others, Linda? No?
No.
Okay.
No, that was it.
Okay, if there are no further changes or adjustments, do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that, Linda Nass.
Okay, motion by Jill Doyle, second by Linda Nass for approval of minutes. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John?
Linda Nass,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is approval of claims. Any questions on claims?
I have one question,
Sure, Bob.
and this would go to Cam, I guess. I was just wondering, Cam, because there was some back and forth we had about how to pay the, like that, and we've been through all that, I know. But my question would be to you, would you or Manny be willing to make a phone call with maybe one or two of the city councilors to the SBOA just to get their input? And here's why I ask. Because they're Taft invoices, your opinion could be a bit biased, obviously, because you're the receiver of the funds. So in order to keep it kind of, wouldn't you guys be willing to do that?
Two things.
It would clarify things for us too, so I don't have to continue to dispute it all the time,
Sure. Two things. One, I have no problem with that
Okay,
at all. And while I would also say I have an obligation, a fiduciary obligation not to give you bad legal advice just for the sake of getting paid. That's part of my license.
Right.
It's part of the rules of professional conduct that I have to abide by when I practice law. So I want to say that out loud. That said, I'm glad to participate in any phone call. My second point would be the State Board of Accounts does not give legal advice. So we can talk to the State Board of Accounts as long as we understand going into it that really their purview is about how the funds of the Redevelopment Commission are accounted for, not as a legal arbiter. They're not a judge nor a
Right.
jury.
No, I understand.
They don't make a legal conclusion as to the quote-unquote legal way to process invoices. So as long as we can go into it on the same page about that point, no problem. And if we want to clarify with State Board of Accounts what they would anticipate seeing, and I think the process the other thing I would add is I think the process we talked through last meeting was addressed in the prior call, but if we want to do that as a group separately, more directly, again, glad to participate. Just a couple of caveats.
well, I just say, you know, as a commission, I think it would alleviate any questions of any potential conflict of interest is what it boils down to. And I think it would cover you guys too, you know, then everybody's on the same page and we don't have to keep going around and around on this, is what my,
Understood.
yeah,
Glad-
I mean, it
glad
would
you-
help everybody.
Okay, yes, glad to do it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Bob, if I, sorry to interrupt you guys, like, were you finished? On the subject, I am now a full-time employee of the city of Westfield and have been sworn in as a deputy clerk to the fiscal officer. So Cindy has asked that I be the representative from her office for RDC. With that said, we do have some issues with the claims. It is her job as the fiscal officer to be able to audit them and certify them. And if we can't audit them appropriately or determine what line we think they need to come out of, for the purposes of accounting, there will be times that we will not audit. We aren't able to audit them, and a good example were your December claims. Just so you're aware, there was a bill that the copy that you guys got, you passed it, but you, one, had not appropriated funds out of the appropriation lines. We're not suggesting the money wasn't there, but you would have had to have appropriated the money. You can't just keep passing the claims when you haven't appropriated money for them. So you now have budget lines that are over budget, and I think that did get discussed in November, but we also never received the claims in December. We were asked, John sent them to Debbie, there was a problem, they didn't add up, and no one ever got back with us. So that $162,000, while it is now fixed, did not come out of the 2022 budget, and it was still over. Tonight's claims, Debbie was able to audit them. She agrees with the total. However, we're not certain that we like where all the lines are coming out of. So I did make a phone call to Lori Rogers this morning at SBOA. She did not call me back. I've been here since 8 o'clock this morning. So it's, again, you're welcome to pass the claims with the understanding that when she doesn't, if Cindy can't audit them or certify them or agree that they're coming out of the right line, that's not going to happen in the future.
I think that steps well beyond the purview, and I would say also that so long as the services rendered serve or benefit the allocation area from which they are to be paid, the appropriation is not legally required. So we can have that conversation offline. This is the first I've heard of it. So speaking from the spot, I would say the claims are for services rendered to the Redevelopment Commission. They serve or benefit various allocation areas and can be paid from cash on hand in those allocation funds legally without any issue. If there is detail to be worked through on the accounting side as to the timing or how those are presented glad to work through those. Again, that's I wasn't aware of that prior to right now.
That's the first I've heard of it too, Marla. Here's what I would request as President's Commission. If you have issues, please contact John Rogers or me or Cam or all of us before the meeting. The meeting is not the appropriate place to handle all this. It should be done prior to the meeting so that we can process this and do what we need to do as a redevelopment commission, which is to pay the bills as
Okay,
one
so
of our
for
aspects.
The third month in a row, our office is requesting to be included in the emails for your packets. We do not get them. I think this is my third request. We'd have to go back and look, but we're getting the claims from you, but we don't get a packet. You don't even bring one.
What do you
I
mean
asked-
by packet? You get the claims. What else do you need?
Well, for instance, I'm printing off my own agenda. It's not a problem, but I am. But it'd be nice to have it all in a packet, because when you guys are discussing...
Packet of what,
When you're
Marla?
discussing what's on your agenda over the weekend, there's no space or place for me to be involved in that discussion. I realize I am not a member of your commission, but if I have something, sometimes I'm not aware on what's on your agenda until I look at it today.
Agenda was posted last week. I don't know where you're
I
heading
agree.
with this, Marla, because the clerk treasurer's office is responsible for the financial matters as it applies to the RDC. All the other things, and obviously you supply the minutes, and you've done a good job with that.
Thank you.
All the other items on here really doesn't concern the clerk treasurer's office. So I'm kind of wondering why you're bringing in other issues that have nothing to do with your office.
Well, wait a second, it concerns the commission on some of these things.
Let her answer, Bob, please.
Okay, because our office is considered the fiscal officer of this commission, we either are involved or we're not involved. But most of the time, we're halfway involved. Because again, we don't know what you're really discussing in your email discussions. So I could have emailed you this morning, but on Friday, I wasn't prepared to really take a big look at your agenda. The claims we processed on Friday. I wasn't sticking around after 4:30 to continue doing that. And I know those claims were being debated a lot during the day. Debbie's the auditor of those claims and invoices. So there have been emails that are going back and forth, but there was no resolute decision about whether we could audit and certify them on Friday. So today's your day, and I understand what you're saying. I'm simply asked to be invited to the table on the discussion, not getting angry because I bring it up in public. This is the only place I feel that I see you guys to bring it up in public.
Marla, John Rogers and I both have a phone number. Anytime you want to call us, please do that during the week. I will answer the phone, or I will get back with you if there's questions that you need to have addressed.
But
When we hear it for the first time, again, yeah, you can say it's a third meeting, but I also suggested to you in a conversation that you need to get a hold of John Rogers and sit down with him and work out this whole claim issue of how it's processed and how it gets back to you. Jeremy, if you want to put in a couple comments, please do. We need to make the process work.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add of value, other than this is the first I've heard of an issue with the claims as well. We'll do our best to get you the claims in an earlier timeframe,
okay,
assuming that's what you want.
Just so we're clear, our last meeting was December 19th. And I said at that meeting, hey, we didn't get these claims. We got them in November. We never received them in December. I said that out loud. Jeremy said, I sent them to Cindy. I said, no, she never got them. I had called her as late as 4:30 in the afternoon, went home, came back to this meeting. The next day on the 20th, I emailed John and Jeremy. I requested to get all those spreadsheets that were attached to your docket. I did not receive those until last week. There's an email thread that goes back and forth, so it's not as if I'm not communicating with them. And this wasn't the first they'd heard of it. This may be the first you've heard of it because we've been busy trying to reconcile them. So we do have questions, and I do want to bring them to your attention. But to pretend like, hey, it's day one. It's day one as far as the claims on your docket tonight. That would not be the case for the December claims. So we'll continue to move through it. I'm not saying we won't pay them. I'm not even suggesting you don't have the money. You absolutely do. It's just a matter of how we handle it going forward. So I'm asking, you know, please include me if you want to include me. Otherwise, this is my place to be able to tell you we have an issue.
So just so that I understand, we're not debating the claims that are getting considered right now. We're debating the claims from last month?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
John?
May I ask a question? In the packet that John just gave me as the meeting was starting, I have two sets of claims, John. I have the ones that say RDC approval 12/14/22, and it adds to $162,053.91. And then I have the one that says claims of RDC approval as of 1/12/23, and it adds to $1,086,329.26. On the agenda, I'll get to my, on the agenda, it says approval of claims. So is it approval of both of these claims? Because there's nothing as an attachment under approval of claims for me to know prior to coming to the meeting, which one of these are we really taking up tonight? I'd like to know that before I continue any more questions or.
Both of them.
That is true, both of them.
Both of them?
The first one had a addition error on it in December. So the total has changed.
The December one.
Yeah, the December one. I
Okay.
made that correction, and I put the packet in front of you this evening with the corrected number,
Okay.
just so that everybody saw that it had a corrected number.
Okay. So we're taking up this one tonight for approval and this one.
That is correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that
No,
because there's a
that's
lot
fine.
of discussion going on. I don't
No,
even know
that-
which
that's-
ones we're
that's
talking
fine.
about.
Yeah, again, I just want to make sure that I've got the signatures
Okay.
that the clerk requires
Okay. So when there's
on the
time,
correct,
when
payable.
there's time for more questions, I have questions on
So-
these. Jill, when we get to the questions on these, I have some.
And just so you understand then, the December claims, because they weren't paid in December, now cannot be paid in December. I think Misha officially closed the book today, and we would have had to have that by December 22nd, not January 17th or whatever today is.
So they're going to have to roll the claims over from December in with the January claims?
That's right.
Didn't we already vote on the December claims once, when the addition was wrong?
yes, you did, and it was passed. But again, the addition was wrong. I want the
Passed, but there was
correct.
an error, Bob, so we said he would give us back the documents with those corrections made
Right.
at today's
So
meeting.
how do we do that? I mean, you have to start over?
So the good news is, we think because the appropriation line was put into the council's budget for $250,000 for RDC, we think you can just pay the $162,000 out of that $250,000. It eats into what that was dog-eared for, so to speak. But we don't think that's a problem. We are still trying to reconcile them, though, which Debbie had sent a late-day email. Jeremy was responsive to it, that asked about what costs advanced were, because we'd never had a definition of costs advanced. And he explained they were fees from the RFPs. So we don't have a problem there, but we have an invoice that we never, ever received that I think goes back clear to April. And then we're still trying to sort through them because that list was very long. So we had to go through and match all kinds of invoices together. So we're working on it. We really are.
Okay, so from our standpoint, John, we need to have a vote again on the December invoices?
That's what I'm asking,
With the
yes.
corrected number.
Exactly, because I want
Okay.
the record to be correct.
Right. Okay, we will do that. Okay, Linda, you said you had questions?
Yes, I do have a couple questions because you said you gave this to us with corrected numbers. This is the 12/14/22, okay, the bigger packet with all these line items. Okay. The first line, I do believe is off by $1. It's $15,962.50. If you add up what's marked as that invoice in here, I've added it up multiple times. If you have a different way of adding it, let me know. In the line, 1, 2, 3, the fifth number line where it says $133,013.53, in all these invoices that you gave us, we only have the invoices for $93,373.50. The balance of that is on details that we did not get a copy of. It's called on the bill costs advanced on this one-page invoice from Taft. Do you know what that refers to? Because I have nothing to reconcile that to. What is the $39,640.03?
It's the cost advance that Marla just referenced. It is the appraisal costs for the Grand Park RFP. So in order to put the RFP to market, we had to do market appraisals. Taft hired those people and invoiced us for the expense.
Okay, so it would have been good to attach that to this invoice so I had something to audit. To know
It would
that
have been
that's,
good to
to know that
attach
that's a right
Taft's
number.
contracts with someone else to this. Is that what you're asking for?
Well, if we've paid this $39,640.03 attached to here because it's not listed in here, we should have just
It's not
had,
gonna be listed on an hours report
I
because
know.
it's a,
so it's probably
separate
on
cost.
on an invoice where we paid it to somebody, is it not?
it's on that invoice where it says costs advanced. That's when we're paying it back.
Okay.
They paid it to someone else. We are
Okay.
paying them back.
Who did we pay it to? That's what
We
we,
paid it to Taft.
but that's what we need to see here, Cam. I have years as a forensic auditor, and I'm not asking for something that I shouldn't, because anything that's listed on here as an invoice, we have to have some detail. And we talked about this at the last meeting. I don't want to see stuff that you need to redact, but we need some detail and documentation that shows what we're paying. And cost advance doesn't describe it. It doesn't say cost advance for appraisals, but then there's got to be some paperwork that adds to that that we should have seen, and that's how you audit it, and that's how you can say, yes, I approve this payment. Whether it's for me as a commission member, which is my responsibility to audit everything I say, yeah, I agree, or clerk treasurer's office or whatever. So I would have liked to have seen that, and then when you go to the last number, the $3194.88, $2,897 on that one is again listed as, no, $297.88 is called costs advanced. But I need something attached, an invoice attached that tells me that that's what that is. I really appreciated getting all these line items of ours, and I did go through them all, and we do need that. Those are required. And then at the last meeting, Jeremy had said that he got the invoices for the November work, but in fact, we don't have, even on tonight's payables, an invoice for the November line charges that are on here, okay? And then, of course, we don't have December, but I'm giving you a little time because we're only in the middle of January. But I think we need to get to what we need so that we can audit them and feel comfortable as commission members when we vote and say, yeah, I've checked that out and that's right. I don't want somebody to call me later and say, yeah, well, that wasn't even on there. So I'm not, as Doug might say, I'm not into the details. I'm not nitpicking. It's just really simple stuff. When you send an invoice and the state code requires it, it says right in the Indiana code that you have to have some detail with those invoices. That's all I'm asking for. So these lines on ours supplied that, but we have no detail on those costs advanced. So it'd just be simple to hand us a paper, invoice or something. That's all I'm asking for. And I appreciate you saying tonight that it was probably for appraisals, but I had no way of knowing that. So thank you on that. And then when we go to the one for tonight for the $1 million, 86,000 plus, I still have the same concerns. And we talked about this at the last meeting, that we could, and we, you know, Cam had a comment, Jeremy had a comment, I had a comment, that we could get the council to give us an appropriation of a RDC, Redevelopment Commission Operating Fund, from which we could pay even the Crown bills or legal bills that we cannot relate back to a particular TIF. Like Union Square is under East Side. Lantern Commons is under Grand Junction TIF. General's under Grand Junction. All areas are under Grand Junction. Osborne Trails is under Eagletown. But we have these TIFs. They just don't generate money. In the past many, many years, what we did in Westfield, because I followed it, was that those fees went into an admin legal fund. And then when we set up a bond, we could pull them out of there and charge them back. But they went into the admin legal fund because there were no funds for that TIF. And there's a real issue with commingling funds from one TIF to another TIF to another TIF. I'd like to see us get straight on that. And
I don't understand what you mean by commingling funds. That's a weighty thing to say, and
maybe
there's
it's, okay.
no sign that there's been a commingling of funds from one allocation fund to another. That
Well,
would be
if we're
wholly
paying-
improper.
If we're
and I
paying
don't
the
think-
expenses on Union Square TIF, out of East Side TIF, that isn't really what was intended by how we set these TIFs up and how we pay for these kind of expenses. And Union Square is a beginning TIF, so it doesn't have funds enough for a lot of things. Lantern Commons,
I'll reiterate that so long as the connection is a serve or benefit test, which is also in the statute, then it is it allowable use of those proceeds. And that's not commingling, that is
Okay.
using those resources consistent with the statutory authority to use those resources. I just wanted to
scratch the word
clarify
commingling, and let's
that.
talk about applying expenses to the TIF that they relate to. And even in your legal letter for tonight, your engagement letter, you may get a statement about that. And I thought, you know, and I kind of took that as, yep, that's kind of what he's saying here. When you made the statement about allocation areas, Taft will coordinate with RDC staff to identify the specific allocation areas served and/or benefited by such legal services in order to facilitate payment from the corresponding allocation fund. And I think we're really talking about, if it's for Union Square, it ought to be put to a Union Square fund. If it's for Front Street, not Lantern Commons, it's confusing, but it's now Front Street, we should put it there. If it's for Osborne Trails, we should put it there. If they have not received revenues yet, I understand that. That's why in years past, we put it in an admin fund. But if both of you agreed at last meeting that we could ask the council to set up an RDC operating fund, and that's where we could put these. So it wouldn't overburden or run up the administration legal fund, and I'm in total agreement with that. But unless somebody, month by month or year by year, is gonna go back and say, well, under East Side, we actually have all, you know, we have all this Union Square stuff, or East Side pays for some Grand Junction stuff. I'd like to see it very clear, so we all understand what's happening in each of these TIFs.
Linda, it is in our opinion that this is an appropriate process. All said, have you talked to the city council about establishing an operating fund?
Yeah, I think you even talked to them in a meeting, but yes, I think we can talk to them.
I have not talked to them specifically about establishing an operating fund for the RDC, nor would I, because then you're taking general fund dollars, so operating dollars for the city that pays for services, and putting it in the TIF districts.
Well, the Indiana code allows for that because the
I
RDC is
understand that it
considered
allows
a
for it.
department like any other department.
Yep.
But instead, where do you want to take it from? TIFs, because TIFs are set up to pay for, we set up an allocation area, we have a project in there, we set up these TIF dollars, we collect so much of them. If we don't use them properly, we're required by law to give them back to the other taxing units. It's, you know, it's not just, hey, we're gathering money for whatever use we want. I think we are, in our position on the RDC, we have to clearly look at what we're using these dollars for and where we're putting them. And it was only first year I came on that this started happening. We've never done it like this before. But the RDC, other cities have these RDC operating funds. It's not an unusual thing. But it's to pay for an RDC that doesn't have any money yet, a TIF.
I'll say it again. If
Go ahead.
if the council were to appropriate funds within its purview for that purpose,
Yes?
that would be fine. So long as you are paying for services that serve or benefit an allocation area, those services can be paid for out of those allocation funds. And if you disagree with that conclusion, then I think the recourse is to vote accordingly on the claims. I'm not sure what else there is to be done. We're satisfied as counsel to the city and the Redevelopment Commission that that's a perfectly legal way to pay for and account for those funds. And I'm glad to have a State Board of Accounts call to discuss that further. Great. But short of the council taking the step of appropriating funds within its purview for that purpose, then I think this is the process that is perfectly legal to follow. And that's my advice to you as the commission. And how you vote on claims is your provenance as a member of the commission.
I'll just make one more comment, okay? Because a couple of things I had a little bit of a problem with. So basically, what you're saying is, under your opinion, that it's okay, you're taking the fiscal unit, which is the council that's responsible for the finances of a city, and you're telling them they have no control or no say over it. So therefore, the RDC, which has 3 members that are appointed by the administration, who obviously vote the same way all the time, which is fine, and you're taking that control away, the fiscal responsibility control away from the council and placing it in the hands of the administration is in essence what you're doing. And that's where I have a huge problem, because that's not the way it's supposed to go. And I think the State Board of Accounts is clear about it. You know, TIFs and revenues generated from a TIF were meant to go to pay for funds for projects within that TIF, and after that, the tax dollars, which are taxpayer dollars, flow back to the taxing units as they should appropriately do. And when that doesn't happen and they're used for special projects, we end up with referendums and all this other nonsense that really we shouldn't. There's a right way and a wrong way, and I don't see what the pushback is. I mean, I think the council would be perfectly willing to do this. It'd be the right way. It'd make it easier on Jeremy. It would make it easier on everybody, and we wouldn't have to argue about this every other month. But I don't see how continue to do things just because we've been doing it the same way for 8 years. If you've been doing it wrong for 8 years, let's fix it now and quit kicking the can down the road. That's my opinion.
I have one more comment on this.
Hold on, if you
Go
would,
ahead.
please. Most of that is sort of editorial or political commentary that I don't feel a need to respond to. The legal ramifications of what you just said, I do want to be clear on.
Right.
And there are a couple of misstatements there that I want to clarify. First of all, as I've said many times, I will say again, so long as the service being paid for serves or benefits the allocation area, it can be paid for from that allocation fund. That is entirely consistent with statute, and I will stand by that legal conclusion. If there is a different policy as to how you would like to approach that, that is a political or policy issue that is not up to me. My job is just to simply advise you as to what I think the law says relative to any set of facts. And that's what I've done there.
But is it your opinion? Is that what you're saying? It's your opinion, your legal opinion?
Yes, my legal opinion, my
Okay.
legal conclusion, my legal advice to
I understand
you,
that.
which I'll reiterate. Anytime you take the law, which is just words on a piece of paper, and apply it to a set of facts, you are making a legal opinion. I have the training and the license to do that. And in service to this commission, my legal conclusion and opinion is it is perfectly legal and consistent with statute to pay for services out of an allocation fund where that allocation area is benefited by those services. Period.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, I think so as
Within
long
that,
as we're
within that
consistent
TIF,
there.
exactly.
And the Redevelopment Commission, it is within its province to utilize those allocation fund resources for its purposes, and that is not a usurpation of the fiscal body, the city council's authority in any way. That's entirely how it's set up by statute. Second, I want to clarify, you have mentioned that there is a process by which unused revenues flow back to the units. There is no mechanism for that in statute. There is an annual decision that the Redevelopment Commission reaches in the context of a resolution as to whether to pass through that next year's assessed value or a portion thereof in a given allocation area if it is not needed to fund projects or initiatives or debt service related to that allocation fund. So you have that chance every year to vote on that, but there's not some mechanism whereby anything that's not used by the Redevelopment Commission just gets sucked back out to the units. So I want to be clear, if that's not a process that is provided for in statute. That's not how that works.
Cam, I agree with what you just said. That is the process during that time. I get that. I've always gotten that. And you repeated yourself 3 times on exactly that we can pay for allocation expenses out of that allocation TIF. I agree with that too. What I don't agree with is paying for Union Square out of East Side, paying for Grand Junction out of East Side, paying for somebody out of somewhere else. I would like to see those kept very clear, so anywhere down the line we know, because in the past few years, and this probably isn't the whole reason to do it, but we've spent a lot of money on Crone expenses for Union Square, but there's been no revenue to take it back from. There's been no revenue in that TIF, so we've taken it from other TIFs. And I'm just saying, I'd like to see us not do that. I'd like to see us, as you two said last month, we could ask for appropriation from the council, keep it in a different fund, keep it separate, then we can pull them out and put them in bonds or whatever. And then I want to read you out of your letter of engagement, because a lot of this, we're talking about Grand Park RFP costs, okay? And it says here that, let's see, from the conclusion of the review process concerning the Grand Park, we're talking about scope of, concerning the Grand Park RFP, which will be billed under a separate agreement. So I read that as you're acknowledging that the Grand Park RFP expenses should be coming out of a separate agreement. We haven't had one, but we're now asked to pay for to approve these and pay them out of RDC funds somewhere, okay? Because we didn't have an appropriation, and I realized that we made an appropriation and it got vetoed. We've all been here, and that's unfortunate. But I'm hoping, taking hope, that the Grand Park RFP is going to have a separate agreement, and we can keep that separate from this other, and where are we gonna pay that out of? Because looking at the Grand Park TIF funds, the Grand Junction TIF funds, it's in Grand Junction, we may not have the funds to pay for some of these expenses. We may be coming up short, so.
We're not going to come up short, Linda. How much do we have in the bank, John? $13 million?
I'm talking about under the Grand Junction TIF.
So for the legal contracts, you'll see that after approved claims, we're going to talk about that, and I'll touch on that as a part of that presentation.
Yeah, and I'll talk about it, but I thought it
And
kind
then
of.
as for where
this
it's coming
conversation.
from, you'll see farther down on the agenda, the 2023 budget update.
Yep, I got that too.
Your answers will come down the
All
line.
Okay, we're at 10 minutes to 7, so we need to move the process along.
Hey.
We have a motion on approval of claims. We'll take the claims for 12/14/22 first, which total $162,053.91.
Mr. President, this is Doug Holtz. I'll make a motion for approval of the claims.
Okay, I'll second that motion. We have a motion on the floor for approval of claims for 12/14/22. John, please take roll.
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry,
No.
Linda Knauss.
No.
Motion passes 3-2. Do I have a motion for approval of the claims for January 12th, 2023, totaling $1,086,329.26?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Jill Doyle. I'll second that motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John, please take the roll.
Linda Knauss,
No.
Bob Beaudry,
No.
Jill Doyle,
Yes.
Doug Holtz,
Yes.
Joe Plankus.
Yes, motion passes 3-2. Jeremy, RDC, legal contracts, please.
Certainly. Whoever's controlling the computer, if you could go back to the agenda. So as we stated, there is an engagement letter specific to the RDC for RDC-specific business, day-to-day business, attendance of meetings, and legal counsel. That is outside. You'll notice that it omits anything related to the Grand Park RFP and/or the Grand Park, potential Grand Park transaction that could come later should that process move into that stage. It's a not to exceed for $150,000, specific to the RDC business. You will have, we are still fine and tuning it to make sure we can get it as accurate as possible based on projections. There will be another engagement letter that comes back to you all, certainly at the February meeting, specific to the Grand Park RFP process, the bid process, which is different than what would be a transaction process later. To answer your question, I think earlier about claims, there are no claims being submitted for legal fees for 2023. The whole conversation about what happened in 22 hitting 2023 has nothing to do with this engagement letter. So this is for services in 23, not services that were provided in 22.
Okay, any questions for Jeremy? Okay, if not, we have a
Questions
motion.
about the letter of engagement, right?
That's what we're voting on, yes.
Right, Joe? Okay, I have a couple questions in that, when it's under scope of engagement, it states attendance at and work in connection with all public meetings, and then it says ordinances, general day-to-day work. Do we have much work to do on ordinances, or don't we do mostly resolutions? Are you talking about ordinances that are coming from where?
They would come from the council.
No, it's
But like when we start an EDA process, we start with a resolution. So we don't ever pass ordinances here, we pass resolutions.
Resolutions would fall under the general day-to-day work.
small o ordinances, resolutions, official business.
Small o.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so we will have a separate agreement for the Grand Park RFP. In looking at your fees down here, it says not to exceed $150,000 for matters within the scope. That's $12,500 a month. Last year, I think the city paid a total of $240,000, which was $20,000 a month. So I don't know what the city and what other commissions or other people might be getting engagement letters for. So are we way above $20,000 from last year? Is $12,500 really our?
That's what we.
Is it high, or we really think that's what our bill's gonna be because the Grand Park RFP is on a separate agreement? So this is without that? Trying to
Are
reconcile the
you
number.
questioning why it's only 150? Is that what you're asking?
No, because this is only the RDC part. I'm wondering when you add the council and everything else, what that number would be, but I'm wondering if $12,500 a month isn't a lot for our RDC.
It's not a lot compared to what we spent last year.
But not with the Grand Park RFP stuff, because
The
that's
Grand
gonna
Park
be in a separate
RFP was
agreement.
a portion of what we spent last year. When the total was
Right.
extrapolated out, 150 is the number that we felt comfortable with. We're gonna spend the smallest amount possible of that 150, but we cannot spend over the 150. And I'm not-
Right, but if we have the RFP in a separate agreement, then this shouldn't be compared to what last year was.
We did an analysis, and this is the number that we feel like is potentially possible.
Do you know what the?
I don't have that committed to
request is
memory.
to the council, you don't have that?
And I would
Cam?
clarify, that is a not to exceed, not a retainer amount.
Right.
Yes,
So
I
it-
get that.
okay.
Yeah, but it's kind of for
What was your
retainer
question
kind of
about
things.
council?
No, it's definitely not a retainer.
Right.
It's as incurred,
Yes,
and that's the annual cap.
right. But all we have to compare it from last year is that kind of fee, because we're looking at budgeted numbers. The other thing is, and I think I asked this from you before, Jeremy, so we don't have the November
You don't have
Taft bills, we don't have the December Taft bills for the RDC matters or the Grand Park matters. We'll get those when, in February?
Yeah.
Last month you said you had them in hand, but we don't have them yet, right?
It's potentially possible that I haven't had an opportunity to
Okay,
review and
so when
approve
it
them.
says we're gonna get these normally on a monthly basis and you want them paid when we get them, I'm just asking that, could we try to get these done monthly?
That's the goal,
That's kind of
yes.
what the engagement letter is. Is that our goal, to get to that point?
As I've stated
goal.
a couple dozen times in both council and in this chamber for RDC, that is our goal.
Okay.
And really just speaks to, puts the onus on, and I don't process the invoices, my partner does, but us getting them to Jeremy on a timely basis. This is a way to hold, for him as staff to hold our feet to the fire on that, so.
I appreciate you saying that. I guess that's what I was going
Okay.
for, because we haven't met this yet.
Any other questions for Jeremy? If not, do I have a motion for approval of the contract for professional services with TAF for the Westfield RDC?
I'll make a motion to
President, this is
approve.
Doug Holtz. I'd make a motion.
Okay, Doug Holtz made the motion. Jill Doyle, second.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. John, please take the roll.
Joe Plankus,
Yes?
Doug Holtz,
Yes.
Jill Doyle,
Yes.
Bob Audrey,
No.
Linda Noss.
Yes.
Okay, 4-1, motion passes. Thank you. Matt, ratification of current Grand Park user agreements. We got to speed it up here.
Yes, good evening, Commission members, Matt Trini in Grand Park. Before you is the January edition of our ratification of contracts that were made between our last meeting and this meeting. I did send it out about a week and a half ago. Have not heard any comments or questions, but happy to answer if you have any at this point.
Okay, if not, do we have a motion for approval of the Grand Park user agreements?
I make a motion to approve the Grand Park user agreements, 15 documents, 247 pages.
Okay, motion by Linda Noss, Joe Plankus, I'll second that motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John, take the roll, please.
Linda Noss,
Aye.
Bob Audrey,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Gaylord Electric Agreement, John, or Matt.
Yes, again, Matt Trini here from Grand Park. The Gaylor agreement was brought to your attention as there were a few adjustments made to this agreement before sending it to Gaylor. Do want to note that this is a every 2-year event that we've been proud to host 2 out of the last 3 years. This agreement is for 2024. Reason that it is before you is there were a few notes or edits made by Gaylor and Taft collectively to come to a mutual agreement in which my team was privy to and worked with both parties on. This agreement was sent to you today. Sorry for the delay in getting that to you. As of right now, that agreement is not fully executed. I have executed my portion of the agreement, and it is in Gaylor's hands now. My intent is to get this to you for ratification for the February meeting, but for lack of better explanation, there were a few edits that Gaylor had requested to this agreement, and I can take any questions that you guys have regarding those edits.
If the commission members are okay with it, let's carry it over to February so we can finish out our agenda.
Can I just make one correction on page 2 at the top where it says first, second line, it says all events are scheduled on a first served basis. I think you should write in there first come,
First come,
served.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Okay, 2023 budget, John?
What I put in front of everybody was an updated version of the budget with new beginning balances. The legal fee lines have been added that Jeremy described in the earlier engagement letter from Taft. And I did make a couple of corrections for debt payments in 305 Grand Junction, just slightly. It had the carryover from last year's debt payment versus the correct debt payment. Those were the corrections. That's all we've done. I just wanted to make sure you guys had the latest version of where we really are right now. And that would be my goal going forward, is I would continue to keep this document updated. But this was where the budget lays right now. So this would be, as we talked about when I first presented it back in October, these would be the numbers we would be working off of for 2023.
So the numbers.
With the legal fees added that we didn't have in October.
So do we have to vote to approve this since it does now have legal fees, but it's legal fees that totaled $200,000? They don't add up to a $250,000, which was discussed in council meetings when legal was presented. What can you tell me about that?
I'm not sure I follow the council conversation.
Well, I think in a meeting when the budget was presented, there was something about $250,000 in open gov for legal
There was
costs.
$150,000, which is the agreement that you approved before, and there was a place mark for $100,000 associated with the Grand Park RFP process, which we do not have an engagement letter in place for. So
Okay,
we've done
but-
our best to allocate those.
The document we approved in October for the budget had 0 legal fees in it. None, on any line. In the October meeting when we approved that budget.
And that's correct.
So anything that you've added is new since then.
That is correct. And again, that's the reason I have it in front of you.
And then it said page 1 of 15 on my copy, but I only got 14 pages. Front Street is Lantern Commons, is that the correction? And we're not listing Osborne Trails as a separate one for a budget this year
That is correct.
because
In
there's
the
nothing
15
coming or
sheets
going.
is I pulled a old sheet out, but I didn't correct the page numbers.
So you're only supposed to have 14, Linda.
That is correct.
Okay.
So we can
Just
get
want
that
to
corrected
clarify, I'm
later.
not missing something.
We
I
can
know
get that
that,
corrected later.
I know that we need to either get through this or adjourn. I'm just going to add, I spent all day looking at these budgeted sheets that John has given you, and the problem is, when you go through the budget, and it sounds like we agree that those lines are not there, from an auditing perspective, we think you need to write a resolution in order to appropriate the lines in the budget because they do not exist. And I know Cindy told you she'd be happy to put those lines in, but you can't just add them in the budget. So it actually comes up because we also did not put in the OpenGov budget lines that we're going to repay the council from Grand Park. So right now, it's short $4,547,500. And that's just with the $3 million, the first payment, because we haven't appropriated all these different lines that are $25,000 apiece. I had Misha go through them today. You're sitting in tall cotton as far as revenue goes. The money's there, but they're not actually in the budget.
Right. So can we just take that step and get
Yeah,
it in the budget?
I can do that.
Write a resolution? We
Right,
can
no
pass
problem
it
doing.
next month,
No
probably.
problem doing that. I'm just curious, though, in OpenGov, I'm almost sure that we added those lines. I'm gonna have to look.
I think they existed in NAV as far as the actual number, but they're not there. That's what I spent all day on, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Very good. Thank you, John. We don't have any additional business at this time, so we have a motion for adjournment.
Can I ask a quick question? John, you said you were going to come back and bring to us the sustainability plan with the 5 years out with all this RDC TIF budgeting and information. Can we expect that in February? How are you doing on that?
Yes, that's moving along. Yes, it's moving along, and I would anticipate February, yes.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, do I have motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Okay, so moved Jill Doyle, second.
Second.
Bob Beaudry. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Roll call. John?
Joe Blankus,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry.
Aye.
Linda Noss.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
That was a doozy. That was a doozy.
Yeah, I'm going to come down by you, John, so we